Casual Magic has been brought to you by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can get cool stuff. Use the code CASUAL for 5% off your order. We're also sponsored by Quiver Time, makers of the Quiver and Bolt deck cases and other fine card holding accessories. Use the code CASUAL on their site for 10% off your purchase. And by Architect, a deck hosting website that doesn't sell anything, but they like me and I like them, so kindly use them for all your deck list needs. Now, on to the show. Hello and welcome to Casual Magic, the show where we talk about the fun side of Magic the Gathering. My name is Shivam, Bhatt, and Casual Magic is brought to you by Cool Stuff Inc. and Architect. Today, I have an actually very interesting conversation on hand. I've brought on Derek Schock from the Pauper Commander Rules Committee to discuss this entirely new, new to me, sub-format of Commander, which has definitely been popping up in my mentions a lot more as of the past, let's say 3 or 4 months. And I'm just saying that Pauper Commander fans, y'all are very evangelical, shall we say, about your format. Very devoted to sharing the good word of having an uncommon commander, and I think it's sweet. I think it's a really cool idea. I love formats of Commander. I love sub formats. So I brought Derek on so we can sit and talk about what it is, how you get into it, and why. You know. So how's it going, man?
I am great, jazzed to be here to talk to you about it, and dispel I think a lot of kind of maybe bad press in the past, and some mysteries and all kinds of fun stuff.
The Pauper Commander community is small but very passionate. I've
Yes,
noticed.
they
Like
certainly are.
every time I post a random card that's like an uncommon creature, or something like this would be an amazing Pauper Commander, or this would be great in my Pauper 99. I'm like,
Yeah,
or like anytime I talk anything about Commander, they're like, yeah, have you thought about Pauper EDH? And I'm like, I've thought about it.
yeah.
That
They're
is the
all
extent.
they're just super into watching it grow, which is great. And I mean, it's been growing very steadily over the last
Mhm.
like 5 or 6 years or so. Um, so it's kind of to the point where now everybody's had a taste of success, and now they're insatiable. They just want to keep it growing and growing and growing.
All right, so can you lay the stage for me? What is Pauper Commander?
So simply, it's a variant of Commander. It's different in several respects. It largely maintains the same framework as Commander.
Hmm.
You have your Commander. It's a four-player, ideally four-player multiplayer format, 100-card singleton, et cetera, et cetera. The primary difference is that in the command zone, instead of a legendary creature, it has to be any uncommon creature, legendary or otherwise. Um, and that's important because, like going back to the when the format was kind of a new thing. It's been around for almost a decade now, by everyone's estimations.
Yeah.
It's kind of spawned in MTG Salvation forums and whatnot, like disparate groups of people around the
Like
globe.
I say that I just found out about it, but realistically, I knew about it back when I was on the Commanderin podcast as well.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
we used to do you know, challenges to ourselves, and I definitely have built a few Pauper Commander
hmm
decks back in the day.
Yeah, it's a simple idea that people just will stumble upon naturally, inevitably.
Yeah,
And back then, the only uncommon creatures that were legendary were the vanilla ones from Legends, like
yeah,
Barktooth Warbeard and like those sorts of things, like 7 mana
mm,
5/5s and stuff. Jedit Ojanin,
my
to
boy.
bring it home, Pauper Commander All Star. But
I
so
don't
that's
think
why,
Jedit has ever been an all-star of anything. I love Jedit Ojanen. I
yeah.
also understand how magic works.
Oh no, I'm right there with you. Like those old creatures, I just have a really soft spot in my heart for all that stuff. But like going back that far, that's why we needed to have uncommon creatures in general in the command zone
Hmm.
rather than legendaries, because you just don't end up with anything useful. Um,
Yeah.
and the other main difference primarily is life total. So in the rule set that we've established, it's 30 life starting and then 16 commander damage.
Mm.
The reasons being is that because you're more limited in the power level of your cards and it's more board focused, it can get a little clogged sometimes. Aggro is a little worse because the removal spells far outpace the quality of the creatures largely. Like
Mm.
a lot of little reasons like that. That's not to say there aren't groups that play with 40 life. There certainly are, but the established rule set that we have is 30 life, 16 commander damage.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, we've heard a lot of because there's a lot of people who want to have main commander actually follow those same kind of like
Hmm.
rules to make aggro stronger, for instance,
Yeah.
or to lessen the impact of certain like combos or whatever it is, and to make the game kind of go faster.
Hmm.
Which is really kind of weird because it's contra to the founding idea of Commander, which
Yeah.
is this is going to be a slow game that
Hmm.
allows you to play 9 drops. But the other thing, if I correct me if I'm wrong, but Pauper Commander also requires you to use all commons in the
Yes,
body of the
yes,
deck, right?
that's exactly right. Yeah, you can. Everything has to be a common, including your basic lands. Conveniently enough, they are a special rarity, but the commons obviously because they're basic lands. But yeah,
I mean, the original Commander rules required everything to be singleton down to your basics,
I
which
know.
meant you were
Luckily,
using a
we've
whole
outgrown
lot.
that.
Yeah, because can you imagine trying to do that these days? It's like, okay, well, Griffin Airy or
Yeah,
whatever.
well, it's like building a colorless deck before wastes, right?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Like that predicament.
Every random garbage land that you could
Hmm.
possibly terrain generator,
Yep.
all these crap. Uh, but yeah, so like effectively here, what we've got is a budget limited kind of like common directed commander format
Hmm.
that uses like uncommons here to drive your story. And
Exactly.
I love that. I love
That's
that
precisely
idea a
right.
lot.
Yeah.
And it's mind you, after like Dominaria came out like 5 years ago, and suddenly every uncommon card is a legend,
Hmm.
it's like probably significantly easier now to make Pauper Commander decks.
Certainly is.
But I still love the idea of having something like Young Peasy as your commander or
Yeah.
whatever it is, like any random cool uncommon you've ever like to me, the selling point for Pauper Commander has always been remember those awesome signpost commanders signposts
Yes.
uncommons you used to draft around and build archetypes around. What if you turned that signpost draft into a real like commander deck?
That's right.
And that's kind of like the vibe that I've taken away from Pauper Commander is like mm, just pretend you drafted a really good fundamental deck minus the bombs.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. It's funny, like you kind of nailed it so succinctly on like the first try, because it is like exactly because it's a common focus format. Like all the novel stuff exists at uncommon, so your commander is going to matter so much more. I love that the word you or the terminology used there is it drives a story, it sets the narrative because that's
Yeah.
precisely what it does. For example, like I've heard you speak on this many times, but you love elves, right? Like
Yes.
my signature Pauper Commander deck right now that I've actually submitted it to there's a competitive Pauper Commander database, decklist database with it and all this stuff. I've submitted it
Of
to
course
that,
there
but
of course there's a
yeah,
CPDH. Why
of course.
wouldn't there
Oh
be?
yeah, no, there is, and I'll get into that a little later. But Heritage Druid is like my big deck right now.
Oh,
Um,
love me a heritage druid.
it's 61 creatures, and it's the most explosive thing I've ever played in Commander or Pauper Commander. It's insane
You
what you
know,
can do with this card in the command
there's a
zone.
reason why I don't play elves in 100 card singleton formats anymore,
Yeah,
is because it doesn't matter what rarity you cap it at. You could play full 100% commons,
yeah.
and elves is just going to be disgusting.
Priest
Like
Titania is a
elves is
common, isn't
pauper,
it? Yeah.
yeah. Priest of Titania, Dwynen's elite, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, literally, it's elves is you could restrict elves to mythics. I mean, okay, maybe if you wanted to, yeah, if you want to nerf elves, restrict it to mythics. Like
Yeah,
that's the
exactly.
only way to get
Yeah,
bad
oddly
elves
enough.
there.
Yeah, but, like, it's really cool, like, exploring, like, what a Heritage Druid can do in the command zone of an elf deck, right? Like, you're so used to things
Right.
like, Marwyn the Nurturer, or I don't even know, like, any of the X million elf commanders you have, Selvala
Azuri
or
or
yeah, all these
Reese
really cool
or
things.
whoever. Yeah, like
But Heritage Druid, like, this deck is built around a simple play pattern of, like, turn 1, you play a 1-drop, any 1-drop, doesn't matter. Turn 2, you play another, redundant 1-drop, and Heritage Druid, and then you have 3 mana that you can
and
use
then
to
you
do
win.
whatever you need. Yeah, you can cast a Spider Silk Armor on turn 2, you can play Elvish Guidance on turn 2, you can
You
you
could play
can
Well Wisher and then gain 300 life, and
exactly,
life is
and
good.
any
I mean,
number of
yeah,
Timberwatch Elf is a common, all of these things, all the payoffs are just commons, and you can cast them all on turn 2, and it's awesome. I love it.
yeah. Like the thing that sells me on the format, first off, is that one of those like guiding like theses that I use in Commander is that it is more fun if you limit yourself, if you try to like
I agree
not just
100%.
play the best powered, highest powered cards. And like the same way that Pauper does in forcing you into a smaller sub bracket of cards, the
Mhm.
way here in Pauper Commander, limiting yourself to commons and at Singleton. like, people are like, "Oh, but commons." I'm like, "Yeah, well, pestilence is common, and
It
lightning
sure
bolt
is.
is a common, and counterspell is a common." But
Yeah.
even beyond that, there are 50,000 commons in
Mhm.
Magic. They're amazing cards, and
Yeah.
getting to use like, I'm almost worried because there's a lot of really broken uncommon cards, like
Yes,
uncommon commanders that you could run in this,
there are. Yeah.
and, like, I just think about Risen Reef. Risen
Yeah.
Reef because Sultai has to be good in everything ever, right? Like,
Yeah, oh, no, so
you
Risen
could
Reef is great. There's a really great, a friend of mine on Twitter, Brad Pauper_B. He, has a podcast called the PDH Pod. It's like one of the bigger Pauper EDH podcasts that's out there.
mm,
And he had a Risen Reef deck for a long time. And it's just, yeah, the elementals themselves at common, like a lot of them aren't very good, but they just cantrip like for
yeah,
free, you know? And it's
exactly.
like that's the thing about building Pauper decks or commander decks in general is just like you find what you like to do, and there's a way to do it no matter what context you put it into. And like whether it's something like cantripping and you like that aspect of things like drawing cards, or just the physical action of like revealing the top card of your library, like those tactile elements play into it as well. There's so
Yeah.
much stuff to key off of. Um, and yeah, Risen
So,
Reef is great.
yeah, I wanna throw a name at you before we get deeper into this.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with, the uncommon from Amonkhet block, Aven Wind Guide?
Yes, that's the one that gives all your tokens flying and has embalm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Flying in Vigilance with Embalm,
Yeah.
and this is one of those cards where every time someone's like, "You should build a PDH deck," I'm like, "Yeah, I wanna
Mhm.
build Azorius tokens, let's go." Like,
Yeah,
that
no,
card is
it's
disgusting.
it's easy to do, and yeah, that card is awesome. Like it's so like tokens are great. I don't know. There's so many things about it, and the card pool itself is just like really lends itself to, like you said, like there's so many powerful things that you can still be doing, but at the same
Mhm.
time, like there's so much room to customize. Like the way that I describe the card pool, and that's kind of the biggest aspect to wrap your head around when you're making the transition, either from like 60 card Pauper to Pauper Commander or regular Commander to Pauper Commander, is like what does the card pool allow you to do? And in Pauper Commander, I describe it this way: the lion's share of cards are going to be variations on a theme, right? Like think about how many
Mm.
commons there are that have the text counter target spell on them.
Mhm.
But with all kinds of different riders, different tertiary effects, different mana costs, different restrictions. So no matter what deck you're building, if you have like three slots that you want to put counter spells in, like which three counter spells are you going to choose? It matters a lot which ones you decide on.
Arcane Denial,
Yeah,
you didn't say please.
it gives your deck a lot of texture. Um, like even like there's the one of Brothers War that you can either counterspell or tap two creatures.
Mm.
You find a villain's lair from AFR. Counterspell or draw two, discard two. Um,
The
like
thing
there's a
is, like,
lot of play to those things.
yeah, and I mean, I hate to harp on this point, but I just keep coming back to
Yeah,
how many good uncommon cards that are specifically built to give you an archetype to hang around.
yeah.
Like
It's a
Belligerent
perfect entry point.
Brontodon, right?
Hmm.
Like Belligerent Brontodon, which is the Selesnya dinosaur that's like everything attacks with its toughness,
Yep,
right? Like that's such a perfect PDH commander because it
yep.
gives you a direction, it gives you colors to work with, and like a lot of our uh like commanders
Hmm.
like the legendary cards we have are getting more narrow and getting more like it feels like PDH lets you play more bread and butter Magic.
Yeah,
If
yes, that's
if that
exactly.
makes
Yep,
sense. Like,
that's another point I wanted to make too. It's a lot
sorry,
like
I don't mean to undercut you. I've just been
no, no,
thinking
no,
about
no.
this a
It's
lot
it's
since we
perfect. It's
we set
perfect
this
how you
up, right?
you in like my ruminations to prepare for this. I've hit on a lot of these same points, so it's great that you're bringing it up because it just. I mean, we're kind of on the same page here. Like these are all very important aspects of it, and yeah, I mean the signpost stuff is great. They serve as a really great entry point if you're trying to like come up with a new idea for a deck. If you're trying to make your first PDH deck, they're great places to turn. Um, but yeah, I mean, this is all very fundamental stuff, and like you hit on, bread and butter Magic is a great way to describe it. It's a lot like limited in that like interaction matters a lot, your board position matters a lot, resources matter a lot,
Yes.
in a way that like in Commander you don't find that much anymore because everything's like trivial almost to do now in Commander. Like generate infinite mana, like you snap your fingers, have infinite mana, snap your fingers, have infinite tokens, snap your fingers, have infinite game objects of any variety.
God, you know what I
Um,
just realized is an uncommon?
but
Winding Constrictor.
Yeah, and
Wind
there's a Selesnya one too that does something similar.
Yeah, like, for the radio folks at home, Winding
Mhm.
Constrictor, of course, is the snake from, Aether Revolt 2/3 that's like, if one or more counters is put on an artifact or creature you control, put that many +1.
Yep.
If you get one or more counters, you get that many +1, which is meant for energy stuff. But it's like, oh, yeah, that's an uncommon. Or the
Yeah.
freaking, Wingmantle Chaplain from Dominaria that we just had. like all the mythic uncommons that we talk about in limited resource and stuff,
Yep.
suddenly you
Yeah,
can
you
play
build
it.
decks around
Or
them.
like, I mean, I don't know, have people been making decks around Wall of Wonder?
Not that I've seen, but I'm sure that
So,
they're out there.
because you know what, somebody needs to do off of. Do you remember what Wall of Wonder does
Yeah,
off
that's a
Commander?
it's a like a 0/5 or a 1/5 that you can
Mhm.
switch its power and toughness essentially. It gets like +4,
Well
-4
done.
for an activation.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
garbage card with weird art
it's got great
from
art.
my
Yeah.
childhood. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm just poking through uncommons and like,
Oh
man, there
yeah.
were some wild. Okay, so let's talk about this. How did you get into this format?
Sure. So I came to it from Commander. I started playing Commander like 2013. I'd been introduced to it
Ooh,
prior um, by a friend of mine, Magic the Gathering curmudgeon Zach Hall, who at the time was doing commentary for Star City Games. Um,
mm,
and he introduced the format to me at some point in the past. I don't remember the exact time period, but I remember there was a Risk the Redeemed deck that killed me. Um, I remember that. And then I got back into Magic. I took a break from like 2005, from basically Ravnica to Return to Ravnica. And then when I got back into it around like 2013, um, the first deck I built, I just fell in love with Commander. And at that point, I started trying to find other ways to engage with the format.
mm,
Um, and like I said before, like just kind of independently came upon the idea, like, what if we just use all commons? And then in researching that, you stumble upon all these different kind of disparate communities that were doing the same thing. Um, so kind of fell into it that way.
mm. So, how did you get onto the governing body for this format?
Yeah, so that probably like 5 or 6 years ago, like maybe 2016, 2017. I
Ho
responded
I
to a
guess
post. Yeah,
a broader question, I guess, is more like, how is there a governing body for this format at all?
yeah. So it wasn't immediately apparent that we needed one,
Mm,
but you run into things like when adventure creatures get released, you need somebody to
mm.
tell you how they work in the command zone.
I was just about to ask because
Yeah.
Beanstalk, Giant is a uncommon.
Yeah, it works exactly how you might think it would work. Like both halves will have commander attacks. You can cast it out off of exile. Like, once you send it on an adventure, you cast that exile. There's no tax on it because you're not casting from the command zone. Like it all ends up being very functional.
Hmm,
But it causes a lot of confusion for people who are not familiar with it. So we just needed to be able to kind of put it out there and communicate the like that kind of official ruling on these cards. Like, this is how they work. And also for like bannings, there's two cards banned right now: Mystic
oh.
Remora and Heuristic Study. Those are the only two, for egregious power level reasons, and making everybody miserable is basically why they were banned. Um, but like
I
these sorts of
forgot that the
issues that
fish was a
arise,
common.
yeah, oh, it sure is, yeah.
God,
As many times
why?
as many times as they'll
Why?
reprint Ristic Study as a rare, it'll always have originated as a prophecy common. Um,
Pauper rules, baby. If
I
it's
know,
common
right?
ever, it's common forever.
Yeah, it goes. But yeah, I mean, when these issues come up, it kind of stress the importance of having people in place to adjudicate them and kind of set a standard and kind of be stewards for it. Like, I think that's really important, and kind of maintain the identity of the format. I think that's a really important thing too, as we learned from Commander, right? Like, there's certain things that you want to maintain, and maintain like a steady vision of the format going on.
Yeah.
So um, I mean that we're a group of people that the initial group was formed from the core of writers for a website called PDH Homebase, which
Mm,
I was a writer for in like 2017 ish. I responded to a Reddit post from the guy who owned it, who was basically just writing articles by himself about PDH, looking for other people to come on and contribute. Um, with the ultimate goal of unifying the format under a single set of rules. That was
mm,
like his aspiration. Um, so as we kind of dove into more and started developing like a base of articles from me and some other folks writing at the time, we kind of went around and did a lot of research and talked to people that we knew in real life who played Pauper Commander. We touched base with online communities that play Pauper Commander, kind of, and tried to find the line of best fit to construct a unified rule set. Because they're all of them had commonalities, like some
mm.
differences here and there, but like any uncommon creature, 30 life was very common, 16 commander damage was very common. So and we figured it was appropriate considering the kind of constraints of the card pool. We found that to be appropriate. So like we just kind of put everything together and put it out there as this is what Pauper Commander is now, and then we kind of marketed it that way through online communities and Discord and all that stuff, and built it up.
Mm. Yeah, like, obviously, you need to have somebody to sit there and tell you what Dryad Arbor does, right? Like,
Exactly.
can I
Yeah.
have Dryad Arbor as a commander? What
People.
happens if
Yeah.
they're the land of the command zone?
Yeah. You,
Spoilers, you can't.
you cannot. That's right.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, these are issues that we run into with the Big Daddy Commander as well.
Hmm.
We, you know what? As an aside, we need to find a term for original commander as it was,
Yes.
because with the more sub flavors and sub formats that come out, they have very specific ways to refer to them.
Yep.
And every time we end up coming back to saying to differentiate original commander from whatever variant I'm talking about, it ends up sounding really cocky or not arrogant. What's the word I'm looking for? Like patronizing to say like
Sure.
now an original flavor commander.
Yeah.
Like we need to have a way to differentiate what we understand as commander from just the umbrella term, because one
Yeah.
of the things I've always said is that commander is not a format, it is an umbrella of formats.
Yeah.
And underneath it is, things like Oathbreaker, Pauper Commander, CEDH, EDH,
Yep.
French Duel Commander, Brawl, right? Like,
Hmm.
and then historic Brawl and things like that. And it's like within that framework, we need to have a way to refer to slow battle cruiser style commander that
Exactly.
just gives such a allows us to communicate without being jerks to each other.
Yeah.
That
For sure.
but that's just an aside that I've been just like ruminating on the more formats come to light.
Yeah.
Um, but like the idea of a Pauper version of Commander, I love, because I love the idea of. I mean, first off, Pauper is accessibility,
Hmm.
and secondly, Pauper is the idea of being able to use all that extra draft chaff, all the garbage cards. Because
Yeah.
like, there's a problem. Like even set boosters acknowledge this. Like, have you noticed in the new economy of Magic cards, when we
Yeah.
crack packs and stuff, it used to be you like get if you were like if you're the type of person who cracks boxes, not everybody is, I understand. But if
Hmm.
you're cracking a box, you'll like the first pack, two packs, you'll go through every common, you'll be super excited about, and then you'll kind of set them aside. The next like 12 or something packs, you're just going to the last four cards at the end for the uncommon
Yep.
and the rare. The last handful of packs, you're just looking for the mythics and the foils and calling it a day.
Yeah.
And Wizards like, okay, what if we just took all that crap out and just gave you like 30 mythics and like a couple of uncommons or whatever? And now commons are the hardest cards to find,
I
or like
know.
random utility uncommons are just impossible to find.
No, I
Um,
love cracking packs myself, and like with set boosters specifically, like I love opening set boosters because it's a ton of fun. Like I've been playing for a long time, and I've always loved cracking packs. So
Same.
I just like do it every set. I'll just like get a bunch of product and just open a bunch of boosters,
Yeah,
and
everybody's like,
it's
"You
ton
can
of
buy
fun.
singles." I'm like, "Yeah, I can buy singles, but I
That's
want to
fun.
crack packs."
Yeah. So like when I'm cracking like set boosters, I'll open it and it's like, oh, I have two commons, six uncommons, and then like four mythics, and it's just like,
Yeah,
well, now
and
like
then like 3 copies of the same damn card in its alt art, right? Like,
yeah,
come on.
exactly. And so like when I like with Brothers War, I got a set box of Brothers War cards, and going through it, I'm looking for certain things that maybe I'll get like three or four copies of like a handful of commons that I need for my various pauper decks and whatever. It's just like absolutely not. There's no commons in any of these packs anymore. Like what am I even doing? It's really strange.
It's real hard, but the thing is that's part of the reason that I liked Pauper a lot, is because it gave you a reason to care about the
Yeah.
vast majority of the cards you open.
Yeah.
Instead of just having like, "Here's boxes of bulk," it's more like, "Here are millions of decks that we can be building."
Hmm.
And I think Pauper Commander, like I've said many times, my favorite way to play Commander is sealed box Commander, right?
Yeah.
Like you get a
Yeah. I
box, you
like
get
that
a
too.
legend, and then you build your deck singleton out of that.
Hmm.
Because the ethos that the ethos and the mindset that leads you into building a sealed box commander is the same one that gets you to a pauper commander if you broaden the pool out, right?
Right.
Like it's like you're still end up using effective trash to build your decks
That's right.
comparatively. Well,
And a lot of times it's not trash in these decks. Like
no,
I
it's not
can't tell
trash,
you,
but I mean,
I have ordered singles for so many cards that are just like unplayable in any other context, like an unfathomable amount of commons.
those are my favorite things to do. Like, I want to make the person over at Star City or Cool Stuff or whatever sit
Yeah,
there and look at my order and go like, "What the hell are you
yeah.
doing?
Like I need to
Why am I
order
digging up these
right
scourge
now.
comments?"
I need to order a Nath's Elite. I don't know if you're familiar with this card. It's a 5 mana 4/2 that when it attacks, everything has to block it. And
That's gross.
when it enters, you clash, and if you win, it gets a 1/1 counter. So it's just like this weird. It's this weird piece of garbage that like why does this card? It's such a everything about it's weird.
It's
CMC, man, like the power
you know,
toughness, the fact that it
I
clashes, like all of these things.
my favorite thing about Commander is when you find that one piece of trash that is
Hmm.
completely useless in every universe but the specific one you live in,
Oh, me
and in
too.
your deck, it is like pure unadulterated gold.
Yeah,
Like
that's
one of my
always the
favorite
most
cards
fun.
ever. One of my favorite cards ever is this card called Renewal from Homelands.
Oh,
Renewal
I
from
bet.
Homelands
If I
is
might
like
interrupt before you finish, funny story about renewal. Terravor just got downshifted to an uncommon in Dominaria Remastered. So
Terravor.
Terravor, it's a 3 mana star with trample. Power times equal number of lands in your graveyard.
Oh right.
So in building a Terravor PDH deck, I did need to dig up my renewal.
You're
But
maybe the only other person who would know what renewal is.
well,
I
continue,
l
continue.
Yeah, so renewal though, it's like it's, 2 and a green for like a slow harrow, right? Like
Hmm.
it's a sorcery speed, sack a land, get another land out of your library, and then draw a card next turn
Yep.
because old cantrips. But in my Titania deck, what that card says is,
Yeah.
2 and a green sorcery speed, get a 5/3, a land, and then draw a card next turn. And I'm like,
Yeah, it feeds your thing. It's
yeah, let's
awesome.
go.
And plus, like, it's always fun to play those effects too. Like I have a deck right now, like an actual like a commander deck, a regular commander deck with it's based off a wild pair and tutoring up one base power one
Wild
ones
pair is
from your
so
deck.
good.
Yeah, it's all about one
Mm,
ones basically is
wow.
the crux of the deck. And Martin Stromgald is like the win
Yes.
condition. Yeah, you tutor up Martin Stromgald and then you attack and all your things get plus 20 or whatever because you're just like accruing all of these little dorks over the
I
course of the
see that
game.
you and I come from the same vintage of play.
I that very well may be. I love the oddball stuff, and
Mm,
like for me, it's all about like different ways to engage with the format or engage with the context of the format, right? Like multiplayer, 100 card singleton, commander style gameplay is what I really like, but utilizing different things and recontextualizing the experience in different ways, I find very fascinating. It's like putting together this giant puzzle, right, to find the best way that I engage with the game. Um, and like Pauper Commander scratches a different itch for me, but a very necessary one.
right. And, like, it's there's a lot of broken uncommons
Yeah, and even
in
commons. I mean, you could.
and
There's
even
still
commons.
infinite combos. There's infinite. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
generating infinite mana is very possible.
Yeah, in
Generating
a few
infinite,
minutes,
enter the battlefield,
like
leave the battlefield, all this stuff.
yeah, I'm gonna get to that in a second because I want you to start talking to me about decks, but,
Yeah.
like, I'm just thinking about one of the most irritating uncommon legends that's come out recently, Trelisara Moondancer from
Oh, sure.
Forgotten
Yeah.
Realms,
Very
which is
powerful.
like, every time you gain a life, you put a 1/1 counter on her or something,
Yeah,
and
and you
it's just like,
scry.
that card is so stupid.
Yeah, and in
Or
PDH,
or
you still have access to all your soul sisters and
yeah,
like all
or
that
like
stuff.
Tree Folk Harbinger that lets you for 1 mana fetch a Tree
Oh
Folk
yeah,
or a forest.
yeah.
Like, okay, so yeah, let's talk about that for a second. What is popular in, PDH? What do people like to play? What are, like, the types
So
of commanders you've seen?
So much like Commander itself, PDH has like a casual end of the spectrum and a competitive end of the spectrum. They're a little bit more narrow. The delta between them is a little bit more narrower because the card pool is more constricted, and just by the nature of that, they just exist closer together.
Mm,
But I mean, there's such a wide range of things. There's a lot of work right now in the competitive end to explore a lot of really experimental stuff. And speaking to that as more specific of a metagame, like initiative stuff is very popular.
mm,
Real
Initiative is
Surreal
hella good in
Kingpin
everything.
is busted. Um,
Wait, which one?
Real Surreal Guild Kingpin or something like that. It's a Baldur's Gate card. It's
Sure, sure, sure.
yeah, it's a 2/5 that gives you the initiative when it enters, and if you complete a
Mm,
dungeon, it makes a creature like +5/+0 and first strike and menace and death touch when it attacks or something like that. It's a really powerful
okay,
card.
I have a really dumb question I need to ask you
Go
because
for
it's
it.
gonna kill me if I don't. Um, what happens if your commander has cycling? Like, if I've got Titanoth
Hmm.
Rex, the
Yeah.
11/11 from Ikoria, and it's got cycle 1 in a green, and then when you cycle it, you put a trample counter on a creature you
Yep.
control. Can I cycle it from the command zone?
No, because cycling you have to discard it.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, But, no, that's a perfectly valid question.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like initiative stuff's very popular. I mean, now every time a set comes out, everybody just builds everything. There's always somebody that's building like something. There's a guy on Twitter, Fintorn Brownie, who just loves all the mono white stuff. So the Great Desert Prospector, the 5 mana 3/2. When it enters, you make a Power Stone token for each other
I
creature you control.
love that
He's
card.
really high on that card right now.
The card is gross.
Yeah, I mean, I've explored it a bit too, and it's like you just make so many Power Stones, then you can activate your invokers, right? Like you just pump them into activated abilities. Um,
How closely do you hew to the commander rules?
Pretty much as close as possible.
Okay, because
Only
like
deviating where we absolutely have to.
right, because there's like cards like symbiotic beast from
Yep.
onslaught or whatever the heck it was, that onslaught, yeah, it must be onslaught.
Yeah, it's onslaught.
Uh, yeah, where it's like, if this creature is put into the graveyard from play, you get 4/1 insects,
Hmm.
and because of the graveyard rules change, that means that this can go to graveyard, give you your bugs, and then
Yep.
bounce back to the command zone.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sorry,
All that
I
stuff.
don't mean to just keep
Oh, no, no, no. I'm
like
happy to clear
disrupting
that.
you for like the purpose of rules, but I think of something and I'm like, now I need to know this exact thing right now.
Nope, I love talking shop. I'm happy to answer any questions. But yeah, I mean, all the big mechanical things function almost identically. The
Yeah,
only difference is just like you can cast an adventure half of the creature from the command zone, like that kind of stuff.
yeah, that
Um,
is weird.
yeah,
Like it makes
but
sense, but
it's interesting though.
it's because that's one of those things where I'm like, okay, so run me through it. How does that work? If I
Sure.
have like if an adventure in my command zone,
Yep.
what happens?
So let's say Beanstalk Giant.
Sure.
So you have Beanstalk Giant in your command zone. You can cast the adventure half for 3 mana out of the command zone. It would
Hmm.
go on an adventure. You put it into exile, and then you could cast the creature half of it for whatever its mana value is. Right? You don't have to pay commander tag because you're not casting from
Oh,
the command zone.
yeah, because it goes to exile and then you
Yep.
choose to leave it in exile instead of
Yeah.
returning it to your command
So
zone.
you could cast the adventure half of the spell and go through that motion, like going through the adventure mechanic as it was designed, or you can just cast Beanstalk Giant out of the command zone. But whatever half you cast out of the command zone would have tax.
What are you guys? What's your opinion on silver border?
Don't allow it. Similar, same as commander.
Boo.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get more people to allow silver borders so that I can convince the bosses to allow
I know
more
it's just a
silver
bit
shenanigans.
polarizing, but I mean, I certainly am not unsympathetic to it.
Okay, I need to see somebody build a PDH deck with Steel Golem as their commander.
Oh hell
Steel
yeah!
Golem, the 3 mana, 3/4, which says you can't play creature spells.
It's a challenge,
Yeah,
Colorless decks are
a
possible.
colorless that says you can't play creature spells.
Mhm.
Good luck.
I've been
Win
actually
with
toying
the
with the idea of building a Sorcerer's Broom deck. If you're familiar with this
oh
card from
god.
Eldraine, it's in
Yeah,
my Squee the Immortal Commander deck, and it's one of my favorite cards in
that
that
card
deck.
is so weird.
But yeah, I mean, in PDH, you have all these things, like
Oh my god,
Expedition
Storm
Map.
Killing
You
Artist is a
sacrifice.
friggin' uncommon.
Yeah, Stormkill Artist. All
That
these
card
things.
is disgusting.
Yeah, and it's so strange. Like you can build. There's people building everything. There's a guy at my LGS who's building Juniper Order. What is it? I forget. It's the 2/5 from Cold Snap. Um, that whenever a creature enters the Juniper Order, whatever gets a 1/1 counter, and the creature that entered gets a 1/1 counter. I don't remember. It's Juniper Order something. Not maybe Ranger.
Advocate. No, not Advocate. Root Weaver? No.
No,
There's a lot of Juniper orders.
it's a
Juniper Order
Selesnya
Ranger.
card. Yeah,
Ranger.
okay, that's what I thought. Yeah,
It's
he's
just
building a deck
reprinted.
around that. It's just another really cool card that just
That
like
card
stacks
is
counters on stuff.
disgusting.
Yeah,
Holy crap! I played that
because
in the midnight hunt commander decks in the
yeah.
precon,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
and that card gets out of control.
Well, think of it this way, Shivam. When you have that card and a sacrifice outlet like Astronaut's Altar, which is legal, um, and a persist creature, you have infinite enter the battlefield, leave the battlefield mana,
that
right? So you can still go
that's not
infinite
okay.
with that stuff. Yeah. It's like there's so much play to these things and so many things you can do.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys must have been able to have a field day with all the random cards that came out in like New Capenna, all the alliance cards that
Yes.
like every time you play a creature,
Yeah.
some weird things happen.
3 color commanders actually are something that we need more of, like
Well,
a ton
it's
more
hard to
of.
make 3 color uncommon creatures. That's
I
like
know. That's why it's hard. And like for example, I mean, it was great. A lot of the 3 mana cards or commanders that we got in Capenna were awesome, like Brazen Upstart, the
oh
Naya,
yeah.
non-legendary one. Mr.
And all
Orfeo is
not to
really
mention all
cool.
the 3 color uncommon legends that were just made.
Yeah, exactly,
Like just
exactly. One of the biggest things, right now, there's only one Teamer commander available, so we need more of
hmm,
those. Bear's Companion is the only uncommon Teamer creature ever printed.
time to send Gavin some notes, man.
I know. And Armament Core is the only Abzan. But other than that, there's options. Not
I
very many
love
of them.
Armament Core.
I do too.
I love that card. Like, that card was so much fun. Yeah, see, like, I just keep coming back to the idea that you can play your favorite draft decks
Hmm.
and, like, make them work.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
there's so many wild and weirdo cards, and common is the most okay, this is tautological, but common is the most common type of card. And
Indeed.
as such, there's everything is in common. Every
Yeah.
range of mana, every creature type, every color and shape and size.
Yep.
Um, so how popular is this format?
So there are, I don't have like specific numbers.
I mean, not specifically, but generally speaking.
It's popular. So I do know this because one of the other guys on the rules committee is a moderator on the Reddit the subreddit for Pauper Commander, and I think now we have more members. We have like 6,000 subscribers, I think, to that
Nice.
subreddit. We're outpacing a lot of like other formats that you think would be more popular, like Canadian Highlander, like all of these other things. I think we're catching up to Oathbreaker pretty quickly in terms of like people subscribe to the subreddit.
I
Um,
love Oathbreaker.
I
I
think it's
mean,
really cool. I haven't had a chance to like get into the format, but like I love the concept of it.
yeah, like I think I love the idea of Oathbreaker and I love the people who do it more so
Hmm.
than I enjoy having signature spells because one of my first experiences was getting turbo milled, and that's an easy
Oh, there
way
you
for
go.
me to say
That'll do
thank
it.
you.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so like, because I know that PDH, I've been hearing a lot more traction on Twitter. I've been getting a lot more
Mhm.
commentary about this, and it's it's nice because your community doesn't demand anything. You're just like make more comments.
It's just look at this awesome thing, do it too. Like you
Yeah,
should do this too. Like you said, they're very evangelical, but like good natured folks. They're not
yeah,
like
but
mean spirited about anything.
they're like my kind of evangelism. There's like
Yeah.
passionate, like, look, this is just going to be fun, and you're going to enjoy
Hmm.
this. Let's do it,
Yeah. Exactly.
and it's cool. Like I think it. Oh wow, you can even get 5 color with a
Hmm.
composite golem.
Absolutely. There's multiple. There, Transguild Courier, though it's a four
Oh,
mana
of course,
artifact.
transient
He's all
courier.
colors. Sphinx of the Guild Pact is a popular five color commander.
So So, do you see a lot of this being played in paper, or is it mainly online?
Mostly online. In paper it's tougher just because you have to like introduce people to it, and I've had a lot more success converting like 60 card popper players than commander players, simply
Sure,
because like for a lot of
they're
folks
already used to it.
they play commander for specific reasons, and that's to like play with these big 9 mana sorceries and stuff like that, and
I
and
want to play
playing with
Soul Ring.
exactly, and playing on a smaller scale doesn't really interest them in that way. But like introducing a 60 card player to 100 card singleton multiplayer is a much easier thing to sell, I think, especially since like that's the experience that is now kind of the dominant one in
Mm,
Magic. So like in my LGS here, I live in Central Texas, and the LGS that I've started going to like a pretty stable like 60 card pauper community, and they've slowly been like more and more interested kind of organically in Pauper Commander. I did not approach them about it. They just brought it up themselves in like the
you're
source
like,
Discord.
well,
And I was like, allow me to interject. I will bring a bunch of decks with me to Commander Night, and you guys can come and we'll play. And so I've gotten maybe like 4 or 5 people into it in paper that way. But yeah, I mean, it's just kind of knowing who you're selling to, and just adapting your messaging based on that. But yeah, most of it's in online spaces now. Like a lot of people will do like they'll stream their Mox Field playtest screen or whatever and like play that way on Spell
mm.
Table. But yeah, it's mostly online. Like it's much harder to do the paper
Well, I
thing
mean,
just
I
because it's
guess
a
if you got
smaller
a
format.
dedicated group at home, and the thing
Yeah.
is, it's so easy to throw one of these decks together,
Yes, it's
and
very easy.
because they're just like, I mean, frankly, you could even run one of these. Like, if you build the right kind of Pauper EDH deck,
Yeah.
you could probably even just run it at normal EDH night at the right power level because these cards
Yeah.
are pretty powerful still.
And
As
your
long
decks
as you
don't
just,
have to be perfect. Like a
yeah, just
5/5 with a 5/5 Trampler is hard to beat. Like that's just
it
the nature
turns
of it.
out your face is going to get punched at 40 life
Yeah,
as easy as at 30 life, right? Like
that's exactly right.
sometimes a
Yep.
big beefy creature is just going to win the game.
Yeah,
Um, so what do you like in this format? What do you like? What would you play if you were going to be starting out? Like, what's a good
sure.
commander to start with?
So, like, if you look at any of the big like tentpole releases, like the major standard sets, any of the
Mm,
signpost uncommons, I think are great options to go with. In Brothers War specifically, like Battery Bearer. I think is the name of the card. It's a Simic card. I think it's a 5 mana 2/4 or something. It allows all your creatures to tap as though they were Power Stones, basically, to add a mana that you can't use to cast non-artifact spells. And then if
Mm.
you cast an artifact with CMC 6 or more, you draw a card or something like that, I believe. Um, like cards like that. Every set now has those signpost uncommons for limited, and they're really great places to start to build Pauper Commander decks because they give you that direction while still like letting you kind of salt to taste a little bit in terms of what you actually play.
God, there's so many. I mean, I'm just going through like
Yeah, like
as you've been talking, I've just been
even
looking
in
through
Brothers
like
War, because that's the freshest in my mind. Like there's
yeah.
there's the Soldier Lord, the blue white Soldier Lord. Like
Oh
that's
yeah, that would be
again like
so perfect.
a very easy one that you can build very easily.
Or there was a one that came out in like Dominaria or something. No, in
Mhm.
Forgotten Realms, Death Priest of Miracle, which is the
Yeah,
two
skeleton
and two
zombies
black
and
skeleton vampire and zombie tribal.
yeah, exactly. Like
Like
creature type specific decks are like a really great place to start because you have a lot of good options there still. Like there's great zombie cards, elf cards, goblin cards. Merfolk's a little thinner, but you can still do it.
well, I mean,
Um,
Merfolk is thin in any format you want. Um, but no, there's like so many. Like for instance, you can play auras really easily because like all of
mhm.
these good aura cards are either commons or uncommons,
Yep.
minus like all the hardcore
Yeah,
enchantresses. But like,
Slippery Boggle's an uncommon that you can have as your
oh yeah,
commander.
I feel like you could take any 60 card pauper deck and extend it out to a 100 card singleton deck pretty
Yeah,
simply.
it's not difficult to do in most cases, and that's actually like a really great way to that I found to attract 60 card pauper players. Like, what archetypes do you like to play, and then you can make a commander deck out of that.
Yeah.
It's a good like through line that you can present.
Like, what uncommon do you wish you had with all of these commons that would just
Yeah, right.
break your deck in half?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of more of these like signpost cards. All the Brothers War ones I think are great. The
Well, I think
Rakdos
like
one, yeah, they're
Utopia,
all.
the twice favored from
Yep,
Theros,
I like that one a lot
like
too.
when enchantment comes into play, so she's like the constellation one that gives
Yeah.
plus one and flying, or like I think in Brothers War we had the Evangel of Synthesis, which is like draw multiple cards and
Yes,
get
I've
things.
been meaning to build a deck card. That's it's like a 2/3. When it enters, you loot, and then I think when you attack, if you've discarded a card or drawn two cards or something like that, it gets
Yeah,
+1/+0 and menace.
yeah,
But like it's a really cool aggressive creature that you can easily build around. But yeah, like these are great places to start. And then like once you play with these cards, like with these decks, you find these really easy signpost cards to build around. Then you start branching off once you find what works for you. Like once you find that resonant experience, then you can kind of veer off in that direction. And that's
like
exactly like what happened to me.
yeah. Like, for instance, if you wanted to play your Rakdos sack deck, you could grab, like aside from the 9,000,000 uncommons are for
Yeah.
instance, there was the one in Guilds or in Ravnica, which was, Fireblade Artist, which is
Yeah.
the 2/2 that haster that when you sacrifice a creature at the beginning of your upkeep, it
Yep.
does
It
2
deals
damage
2.
to target
Yep.
opponent or
Also,
player,
yeah,
token or
for
whatever.
sacrifice decks, there's so many cool. Fireblade Artisan's cool. Mayhem Devil is an uncommon that you can have as your commander.
Oh,
And there's
yeah.
a lot of
Mayhem
sacrificing that
Devil, oh my
happens. There's a
god.
lot of sacrificing that happens that triggers
You
Mayhem
could build
Devil.
a cat oven deck.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, more or less. Cat was downshifted. Yeah,
Yeah,
like,
god, that's gross.
and there's a lot of cool common support for sacrifice too, because it's like one of those themes that endures through sets. Like
You know what?
Body Dropper and New Capenna and Slaughter
When
Priest of
you're
Mogus is
desperate
another
and need to
commander.
have a friggin', when you need to have a theme for red black, just throw them into the grinder and
Yeah.
call it a day, right? Like,
Exactly. I mean, it's easy and not in a bad way, right? Like the more that these themes persist through sets, the more depth you get to them in Pauper Commander,
right.
which is a great byproduct. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, just don't try to use something like a Fraley supplicant. It's like a mono green card that demands you tap
yeah.
sack a red or white creature to have anything happen.
I'll never tell someone to not get too weird, but that might be a bridge too far.
Okay, but let's go into that. What kind of weirdo decks have you seen?
Let's see. What's the
Like, I'm sure
so
you've seen a ton of snow decks because of like Kaldheim.
Yeah, there's a group of guys. They call themselves the PDH Pals. They stream on Twitch and they make gameplay videos, and they do oddball stuff. They have their own like meta basically.
Oh, I love it.
They have like they've popularized Dragon Mage as kind of like a meme deck. Um, which is a cool one. But they play all kinds of stuff. They've popularized the holy trinity of their meta is Scare Tiller, Marching Duodrone, and Howling Golem. Cards that they put in every single deck that they have. Um, Between them, they have like a library of like hundreds of Pauper Commander decks. Um,
Yeah, well, I mean,
but
it's so easy to just throw these things
I
together.
know. But like the weirdest stuff that I've seen. Oh my goodness.
Ooh, Glory Scale Vyashno. Cast a
Yeah, the
multicolored spell
multicolor
and get
stuff.
yeah.
I can't even. Like Ice and Shade. Chandler. Like a lot of the Homeland stuff.
Chandler.
Um, like that kind of stuff is really cool. Like the weird Ice Age stuff, like or alliances like Fairly Supplicant, like you mentioned. Like
Yes.
I've seen all kinds of stuff. Maybe not like that, but close, like in that realm. Like a lot of those creatures will
Mm.
generate those games.
And
Um,
it's probably easy to make, like, all the standard archetypes like goblins. Like,
yeah,
the fact that you could have a goblin matron as your commander
yeah. Or in the
or
99. I mean, you can do whatever you want with
yeah, or in the
it.
99 or goblin lackey or
Yeah.
goblin recruiter. God, goblins put a lot of really broken cards at common and uncommon.
Yeah. Oh, I've got a weird one for you. This is actually a deck that I built, so that's why it comes to mind now. Lashweed Lurker. There's
Lashweed
no,
lurker.
yeah, it's an emerge card
Oh. Oh.
from Eldritch Moon.
Let me look it up.
Yeah, I
Lashweed
won't
lurker.
ruin the surprise.
Tell the
I'll
people
let you
about
read
it
it.
while I sit
So
here.
it's an 8 mana 5/4 8 generic mana. It's a
Hello?
colorless card with a Simic color identity. You cast it, you put a non-land permanent on top of its owner's library, but it
Hmm,
has emerge for green blue 5 generic. And emerge is basically something where you sacrifice a creature when you cast the spell, and the mana value of that creature helps pay for the cost of the emerge. Um,
right.
this reduces the cost of your commander from the command zone. It helps pay for commander tax. It applies there. So what you
Oh,
can
so it
do,
acts as a replacement instead of paying the commander tax, you can pay just 7 mana
it's
and
it's alternative cost, and the commander tax is applied to that. So if you have something like Maul Splicer, which is a green and 6 generic for a 1/1 that makes 2 golems, so it's a 7 mana spell. You make your golems, you sacrifice it to cast like a 1 mana Lashweed Lurker. Um, you can do a lot of cool stuff like that, sacrificing creatures for value with death triggers. It's like a Simic aristocracy kind of deck, so it's kind of a weird space that you can't really fill in normal commander, because there are no emerge commanders really at
Right.
rare or mythic. Um,
Sure.
but that's a weird deck.
That sounds neat.
It plays Scornful Egotist, if you
Oh,
remember that one.
yeah, of course, the
The
most
8 mana
iconic
1/1.
8 mana 1/1.
Exactly, that morphs. That card's in the deck, and it does work.
It turns out that CMC Matters is great when you've got Emerge, right? It's
Exactly,
like,
yeah, that's exactly why I was so drawn to it. But yeah, you can do weird stuff like that because those cards
man,
existed uncommon.
wow, what a format. What a I love when people come up with weird creative ways to play Commander. Like, that just
Yeah,
makes me happy, and the more narrow you can make a format, the more, like, specialized you can make it, the more
mhm,
interested in it I am, because it's just
right,
like it lets you. Because one of the things is, like, as a member of the CAG, as a content creator, as a very deeply invested member of Magic,
mhm,
uh, it's easy to get bored by the same crap we see over and over and over again,
yeah,
and one of my joys is highlighting random cards that nobody sees or thinks about or looks at anymore,
mhm,
right? Like,
yeah, exactly,
I think there are so many amazing commons that have been out there that have just been buried and forgotten because it's like,
yeah,
"Oh, well, it's not as good as Soul Ring. How am I gonna play it?" I'm like, "Come on, man.
yeah.
Just, like, chill."
I know, and that's the great thing about Pauper Commander and even like competitive Pauper Commanders. You don't have that fast mana problem, like even at the most competitive end of the spectrum, right? So
Mm,
there's just a lot of pluses there, and it's a format that I think is great for exactly the reasons you mentioned. Like, it's really important, I think, as a Commander player to be able to like recontextualize things and engage with these cards in a way that you otherwise would not. Like just appreciating what these cards do and like maybe the effect of a card at common, what it does. The card itself, you might not want to play in Commander, but like what that card does, you might want to find a way to replicate in regular Commander. Um, so it really broadens your
oh,
horizons there. I think that's really important. I think playing and being so deeply invested in Pauper Commanders made me a better Commander deck builder, and vice versa.
mm. Yeah, I believe it because it forces you to look at different layers of
Hmm.
cards and forces you to think about cards in a different kind of perspective.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's the same thing the Pauper itself does to the rest of Magic. It forces you to look at cards that you would otherwise just discard and be like,
Hmm.
wait a second, is there a utility here that I can use?
Yeah.
And that allows you to find new and niche and interesting and different things you can do with the cards, which
Right.
just is more fun. It's more
Yeah.
fun. Like, we have thousands and thousands of Magic cards. Why are we playing with the same 300?
Yeah. Exactly. Like, so I mentioned before, like this Heritage Hero deck that I've been working on is like a deck that I've been building more competitively. The casual deck of choice for me is Mischievous Catgeist. If you're familiar with this one, it's a
I
recent
am
card.
not.
I'll explain it here. It's a blue and a generic for a 1/1 cat spirit. Whenever it deals combat damage to player, you draw a card. So it's like a scroll thief. But it has disturb for 2 generic and a blue. So that means you can cast out of your graveyard for that amount of mana, and then it comes back into play as an aura that gives a creature the ability of whenever it deals damage to a player, draw a card.
Huh.
Yeah, so it's a deck that's built around just kind of that tempo style of play, like deal damage, draw a card. It comes down on turn 2, so you can chip in for some damage before people can get set up. And then what really turns it on is a suite of cards that have this effect. Let me see if I can find one. I have a deck in front of me. I'm just going through it right now. Um, Wings of Velocivel is the name of the card,
Mm,
and there's a
classic
there.
changeling.
Yeah, there's like 4 or 5 cards that have the same effect. It's basically you pay like 2 mana, blue and a generic. It makes a creature you control base power 4/4, 5/5 until end of turn. So you juice your creatures that way. You make them unblockable with spells. You draw cards when they deal damage, and you just like KO people by making your 1/1 a 5/5 until end of turn. So it's like blue. It's like mono blue pump spells, you know. Um,
Oof.
but that's kind of things you can do, or you can play it on a blighted agent. There's a blighted agent in the deck too,
Mm,
so you can pump your blighted agents and get people that way. Um,
that's clean.
yeah,
Oh,
but
yeah, all the unblockable cards that are in blue too.
yeah, a lot of
Oh
spells
yeah.
that make things unblockable. And when you're casting these spells, it also lends itself to heroic creatures like Wave Crash Triton. So 1/4, whenever you target it with a spell, you freeze a creature, so you just tap it, doesn't untap on their opponent's next turn.
Hmm.
So you just kind of play board control that way. There's a lot of play to these cards. Like there's so many
Okay,
like I said.
so
Yeah, go ahead.
no, I'm sorry. Finish your thought.
I was gonna say, there's just this is a great example. This deck is just a great example of like how many different sorts of effects there are and how you can mix and match them to create something really unique.
Mm. Yeah, no, because that sounds that sounds hella fun. That sounds
Yeah,
legitimately fun. But this you're talking about bro reminded me of the fact that they're uncommon prototype cards.
yeah,
And that must be a fascinating idea of commander. Like, does the commander
hmm
tax apply to both the prototype cost and the normal cost?
yeah. Whatever you choose to play out of the command zone would have tax applied.
Because like I love the idea of like, oh, I can play this as a 3 drop now, and then it dies into the command zone.
hmm
Later on, I can play it as a 9 drop or something.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, just oh
Well, it's
man,
like that modality, right? Like just
yeah.
like squeezing every inch of value out of your cards as you can, because like card advantage is like so different in this format. You don't have spells that draw you a million cards. Well, there's like a few Rush of Knowledge. It's a 5 mana sorcery. You draw cards, you go to the highest mana value of cards you have on the battlefield. Basically, like there's ways to set that up to draw like 7 cards or whatever. But there's not like outside of blue a ton of ways to generate a lot of card advantage. So like adventure cards are really good because it's 2 cards in one. Like it's one slot in your deck, but it's 2 spells.
Hmm.
Prototype is the same way. Like modal cards are really important because they give you extra play with the limited slots in your deck at a lower power level. Um, yeah, but the prototype cards are awesome. Bro has been one of my favorite sets recently, for so many reasons. I love it to death, but it's been such a great set for Pauper Commander.
It is such a great set for every commander.
Yes, I agree, 1000%.
I mean, any format that gives me a mythic that makes soldier tokens is a format
Exactly.
that's
There you
going to
go.
just win my heart really easily. You know what, man? This has been a lovely chat, and this format sounds hella fun. Like I I'm definitely feeling very intrigued. Like there's so many
Yeah.
really cool black white life gain decks and like
Oh
drain decks that I
yes.
want to build because there's like every friggin' black white uncommon
Yeah.
is like a
And
you lose a life and I gain a life and we'll lose a life
yep. And there's that
together.
that that new
Um,
legendary in Dominaria that's blown everything wide
oh
open.
my god,
Yeah.
that card is so good. I want to build a real commander deck around that.
Yeah.
Real big boy commander.
Big boy. Yeah. Grown up.
The problem comes back. The problem comes back. I'm not trying to slight your format, folks. It's just the way language works.
Yep.
Um, anyways, my friend, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a really interesting conversation. Like this format sounds way cool. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm predisposed to love this sort of thing. Um, have you guys tried the artisan format that Kessler has been proposing?
I have not. I'm kind of loosely familiar with it, but I haven't really dove in.
Yeah, I think it's similar to Pauper Commander, but different enough that it's like I don't know. I will leave that to him to evangelize, but
It certainly
it
intrigues
is
me.
really, really fun. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's mainly playing a lot of uncommons.
right.
But yeah, so if folks wanted to find you or learn more about Pauper Commander, where could they go?
Yeah. Oh goodness. So me, I'm mostly on Twitter in terms of like public spaces. My tag is Derek Deer Reader. All those three words smooshed together into one long run on thing, with the
Mm,
at symbol, obviously because it's Twitter. If you want to get into Pauper Commander, a great first place to go is pdhhomebase.com. It's got the rules. It's got links to the Discord. Um, uh, you could check out the PDH Pod on Spotify. It's a great introductory, casual focused PDH podcast from three great folks. One of them is another member of the Rules Committee. You can certainly check that out as well. And then lastly, if you're a more competitive focused person, you can check out the Tryhards and Common Connoisseurs on YouTube. That's the name of their channel on YouTube. They do gameplay videos, let's build streams for competitive decks. I've been on there a few times to build competitive decks with them. Um, but yeah, I mean, no matter where you are on that spectrum, there's something out there for you.
yeah, like that is the one thing about Pauper and like Pauper relevant, Pauper adjacent formats that I've noticed is that they lure you in with like, oh, you can just play commons, it's fine and
Yeah,
fun, and then they punch you in the nuts over and over again until you die.
that's right. They sure
Because
do.
turns out Pauper is pretty bleeding cutthroat.
It can be
Like
cutthroat. Yeah.
it is it is one of the most disgustingly it's like Pauper is not like actually just like, "Ooh, weak commons." It's like Legacy Light.
Yes.
It's it's pretty
Yeah.
brutal.
There's a lot of really intense effects that you can pull off.
Yeah. But, as always, my friends, you can find me at Gear Reporting Gears. You can find this podcast anywhere podcasts are sold, or at Cool Stuff Inc. every Tuesday, or at YouTube every Thursday. Thank you to my editor, EK. And remember, my friends, it is not magic without the gathering, and we will see you next time.